Welcome to I See You, a podcast where we know that human connection restores mental health and resilience. I'm your host, Julie De Jesus, and I see you. Let's be friends. Welcome to the ICU podcast. We're happy to have you on this episode again. This is a podcast where we talk all about how human connection restores our mental health and our resilience and helps us to have a more peaceful, joy-filled life than maybe we previously thought. So today I am super excited to have my friend on here, Gideon. Gideon, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah.
You're
Happy
welcome.
to be here.
You're so welcome. Gideon, I know you. Obviously, we talk quite often. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Snapshot of your life.
My name is Gideon DiMeglio. I was born with no arms, and I never know how to describe my feet. I've got like 33% legs.
0.7896% legs.
Something like that. But yeah, my legs are just the fibia, which is the front shin bone, the rear shin bone, and then just with my feet connected, and then I've got 4 toes on each foot.
That is something I didn't know. You did not tell me that.
Yeah, so I have a really huge toe span.
That's amazing. It's like a wingspan, but
right.
And you use your toes when you talk, when you express yourself, right?
Totally.
Just like hands, makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm Italian, so I really get into it sometimes.
Yes.
And people are like, "Why are you waving your feet at me?" But
I can.
So my feet connect at the bottom of my leg there as normal, and then I have no hip joints either. Okay. So my legs just kind of go up to my hip, and then it's all muscle and nerves and that kind of stuff from there. So I'm super flexible. If the mic wasn't in my way, I could bend all the way in half, and put my head under my feet.
Really?
So I do everything with my feet, which includes eating, playing on a computer, typing on a computer, drawing. I went to college for a visual arts degree with an emphasis in illustration. Yeah, drive my wheelchair with my feet.
Very cool. And something very big is happening in a couple weeks for Gideon.
That's true.
And his wife.
Yep. Yeah, so I've been married for about 6 years. My wife, Brittany, and I are expecting our first kid in 3 weeks. Having a girl.
So fun. That's awesome. Okay, well, I love on this podcast having different perspectives of a similar truth, which is the way human connection can improve our mental health and our level of resilience. I know many of your stories. I'm sure there's so many more. But can you tell me of a specific time when human connection has helped restore your mental health and your resilience?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of different stories.
I know.
Regarding
Why did you choose and not me? Because I don't know.
Yeah, I can really think of 2 really good ones. One of them was a old youth pastor, I guess. His name is Josh Gutzwiller, and so I went to a non-denominational Christian church and called K2 the church.
Is that here or where was it?
Yeah, that's in Salt Lake.
Okay.
Right now, they actually share a building with Southeast Christian Church.
Gotcha.
But at the time, they had 3 buildings, 2 campuses. So it was a really big, probably 1,000 regular attendees a week. And I was 15 or 16 at the time. And I went to show up to teen class the day, and just no other teen showed up. And it's me and Josh. And he was like, "Well, if you're the only teen here, let's just have a good personal conversation." And at the time, I was kind of already struggling with some anxiety and depression, and really a lot of self-hatred towards my body, and a lot of hatred towards God for making me this way. And he was like, "You know what, Gideon? I think a lot of people see you, and they see you as some kind of inspirational piece of life where they can look at you and see that you're a happy-go-lucky guy, and they can feel better about themselves." And I don't know, do we allow any kind of cussing on this podcast?
We do.
Okay.
We certainly do.
All right, great. And he was just he just looked me dead in the eye. And he was like, "Gideon, I don't give a rat's ass that you're disabled." And he's like, "I love you because of who you are." And he's like, "The rest of that junk I could, keep or take. It doesn't matter to me at all." And that was the first time, I think, where I really felt, like you said, seen by another person for who I am. Because obviously, a lot of people see me, the physical me, and there's a lot of instant assumptions, right?
What are some of those assumptions?
I don't know. A lot of people maybe think that I can't take care of myself, or I know you're later going to ask me where I can be found. And one of those things is TikTok. And I remember I made this TikTok that featured Brittany, and somebody had commented like, she's only married to him for the disability check. I was like, yeah, dude.
Dude, that's bold.
Yeah,
That's
no, it's
amazingly
really
bold.
I remember I responded to him with like a video response, and I was just like, I'm not even on disability.
Joke's on
And
you,
it's like,
bro.
and even if I was, it's like $500 a month.
There's a lot of people that can provide
Buy
$500.
Brittany to more work than $500 is worth.
Yeah,
So yeah, I mean, anything from like, what I do or don't need help with.
for sure.
Yeah. A lot of people are surprised to hear that I draw or play video games.
Well,
or
I just
whatever.
was,
Yeah.
right? I was like, you can draw? Like, well, how? Because I couldn't draw well with my feet, but
Yeah.
you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Totally. You don't know until you ask.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's the thing. I mean, people can make assumptions about me all day. And the honest truth is, I'm so happy to answer questions, right? That's like one reason why I would even be willing to be on a podcast, anyways. One of my big things is just disability advocation. And I think, like, to really advocate for disabled people, you have to be willing to let people ask questions and to answer them in an honest way. So
I love that. Yeah. Just there's a lot of grace in what you're saying. Like, how do we give other people grace that we want extended to us, no matter our situation? So I love that youth pastor said that to you. That's amazing. And it's so funny. What about him seeing you that way helps with resilience?
yeah. So, I mean, at the time, and, my story is long and complicated, more complicated than a 25-minute podcast allows. But what's so funny about that story is I remember that story really vividly. Like, I can picture what the room was like, and I can remember what he was wearing, and, all that stuff. So that memory is really, really strong in my head. But I continued down that path of depression and anxiety and self-hatred for at least 3 more years.
That wasn't like a flip of a switch.
Yeah,
Now we're good.
believe it or not, mental health is more complex than that. You don't just stop. But that really gave me a really foundational truth of what I want to find in other people that are going to be important people to me. And so we have to now move forward to that other side of the other story that I mentioned I had 2. And wasn't even present for this one, but it's a great story. And it actually comes from Brittany, my wife. When she was in high school, I believe, or maybe middle school, but I'm pretty sure it was high school. She was in a class and had to write an essay about somebody she knew that was disabled. And we already knew each other. I was best friends with her older brother. And somebody in her family, it might have been her older brother, it might have been her mom or something, was like, well, why don't you write about Gideon? And she just was like, Gideon doesn't have a disability.
Oh.
And it was like, in her mind, and this is, a big piece of why I think I married her and was attracted to her, is that in Brittany's mind, like, I'm just like any other dude. She doesn't see the wheelchair. She doesn't see, the lack of limbs or limb differences or what have you. And she very much, like, she pushes me just beyond measure to do things that, sometimes I'm not even sure I can do, right? And like, we're about to embark on this great adventure of having, a baby, and, this baby is going to grow up and be a kid and, then a teenager and all these things. And I'm sure she's just going to push me to do more of those things.
It's just an interesting conversation as we talk about mental health and resilience in the past seasons on ICU. There's been a big focus just specifically on kind of the really high stakes moments of someone struggling to even want to stay alive, to have purpose, anything like that. I feel like there's another level that we all want to, or hopefully are trying to engage in, as mental health is so much more than just enduring, but that there's actually a higher level, higher way to live, which is having purpose. And that's something you and I have talked a lot about, is making meaning from pain. And I think your perspective is really valuable on that. Not because like you said, I mean, so few people can relate to your specific physical disability. Well, then you'd relate to no one hardly, right, in the world. Like, you'd have to search out and find, these are the only people that I can be friends with. And I think that's a lie so often that can actually divide us, is this idea that we have to be so similar in life circumstances to understand each other, when really it's like, it's all completely different perspectives, and that's valuable. But hopefully we're coming to the same truths, which is things like, you can make meaning from pain. You can live a better life. You can become resilient, and that we are built to do those things together. We all need the connection of other humans.
Definitely.
Right. If I want to speak to one thing you brought up that I think is important, is that this idea of what your pastor said about people looking at you as an inspiration.
Yeah.
How's that feel?
And
I don't have an answer in mind, just like the good, the bad, the ugly. What's
Yeah, there's
Or when someone comes to you and says it and it's just like, wow, just seeing you is so inspiring.
yeah, there's a lot that comes with like anybody ever making that kind of statement or, whatever. And I get that a lot. We get a lot of people that come to us in public, if Brittany and I are, at an Olive Garden or something, like on a dinner date, and somebody will come up and for some reason they always think it's appropriate to touch and like break that physical
They touch you too.
barrier, but
It's not.
so
Don't
weird.
touch
But
strangers.
anyway, yeah, like I don't want your germs anyways, but I don't know where your hands have been. Anyways,
They're like, you can't touch me. I'll touch you.
I was about to say, and I don't know where my hands have been either, but that was stupid.
We all know where they have been.
Right.
They're not real.
So, anyways, so they'll like walk up, and put their hand on me and be like, "You're such an inspiration," or they'll be like, "You're such a badass," or whatever. And it just depends on the person. Some people, it feels like a genuine connection, right? They, maybe they're actually inspired, or at least they're in some kind of awe of somebody eating a bowl of fettuccine alfredo with their feet.
I mean, I think it's disgusting, but whatever. Just kidding.
Oh man. And sometimes people maybe feel obligated or some kind of like exterior pressure on them to like go and say something to the poor disabled guy, whatever. There's also some people will be trying to say that, right? Like you're such an inspiration, but instead what they say, like what actually comes out of their mouth is like, "Oh, your life must be so hard." That's like, dude, no, I live a good life. You know what I mean? I have a stable income. My wife has a stable income. I have a wife. I'm married. I don't have to worry where my next meal comes from or whatever. There are certainly difficulties that exist in my world that don't exist, in your world.
Yeah.
But by all means, like I live a good life. Like, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and you and I have talked a little bit about this. The mental paralysis that can come is something that can impact anyone in any circumstance. A lot of us don't know what's going on up here, and this is everything.
Yeah.
This is everything. Certainly, we all have different challenges. Like you said, you for sure have different challenges than I do. But the challenges up here are, I think, more debilitating than anything, and the most freeing. I think for me personally, at least, like you having struggled with my own mental health, that has changed everything. Like I've had times when everything around me is going well, and I feel completely alone inside, and I'm struggling more than I ever have. And I've had things falling apart, and I've been more at peace inside knowing that I'm living a life that's on purpose and I know the right direction I want to be going, even though maybe everyone else or everything else isn't following suit. I'm sure of this is what I'm made to do. And so once again, I think just when I hear, wow, you're such an inspiration to me, I hear that I'm like, oh, that sounds heavy to
There's like a responsibility to
yeah, like,
yeah.
Congratulations, you got up today. Like it's a lot of like, what does that mean about me? What is that? I don't know. It's a lot. Just have so many people comment on just your very existence. I can see that could be heavy. Like I'd have to do mental work around that what does that mean for me?
Yeah. And I mean, I didn't do that mental work. I mean, it's not really expected of a teenager to be doing that mental work anyways.
Yeah.
I probably should have been in therapy. Yeah. I mean, I didn't do that mental work, and I didn't have any kind of like core belief system about myself for any of those statements to stand on. Right. So I think of like Inside Out, where like Riley has the core beliefs. Or sorry, Inside Out 2, they kind of talk about having those like core beliefs about yourself, right? So you have core memories and you have core beliefs. It's like, I'm a good friend, or, I'm a nice person, or whatever. Other people told me basically like what my core beliefs about myself should be. And I didn't necessarily believe them for myself. So then, I'm 16 years old, deeply depressed. And somebody's like, you're such an inspiration. I'm so happy that you're happy all the time. And I'm like, dude, I'm so far from happy.
Yeah.
Or like, I mean, I was suicidal from like ages like 18 to 19. And, had like attempted a few times on my life. And I don't have a lot of memories necessarily on that time, probably just vaulted away and thrown away. But I wouldn't be surprised to hear that like, a couple of days after one of my suicide attempts, somebody comes up to me and is like, you're so happy all the time. Like, am I?
You're like, is that what you need to hear?
Right. Yeah.
Well, and also that I don't want to overthink this too hard, but you're such an inspiration that you're happy all the time. Well, what about when you're not happy? Are we meant to be happy all the time? Is there anything wrong with feeling all the emotions God gave us? Like, I think even that, it's like, man, the pressure to be happy all the time.
Yeah. Do negative emotions even really exist?
Are they negative or are they just the human experience, right?
Exactly.
Like, once again, that's just a mindset shift. But I think the judgments we make about our own feelings are almost a very large percentage for a lot of us of the reason why we're depressed or anxious is making judgments of how you should be feeling or should not be. Like, we just like can't give ourselves a break of like, we just feel. And it
Yeah.
just is, and not placing judgments on what that means about us or what we should be doing. What's an action item if there's someone that's feeling stuck? Obviously, you know what it feels like to feel low. No pun intended. Sorry, it's just such a good one. Okay, what would you like? Someone that's struggling, feeling low, like I know. Doing a long list of things of here, I'm going to improve my mental health and resilience. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to connect more. Like, it can be overwhelming to do a lot. What's one actionable item that you've seen be helpful for yourself in building this beautiful life you have
Yeah, I mean,
that isn't perfect and you're not always happy in?
it's true. Yeah, there's so many things. I mean, really, my mental health has just vastly improved as I've gotten older, right? My brain has matured. But as far as like an action item, like something you actually choose to do, I think of when I was at my lowest point, I was surrounded by people, right? So I was going to a really big church, right? There was definitely no end to the people that like I could reach out to. And the key thing that changed was right after my last suicide attempt was that after it, I had decided to no longer like wear the, I don't know, mask, I guess, or like shroud of Gideon, the inspiration, right? And I was like, I'm just going to be very vulnerable and raw with people. I started just telling people, it's like, no, I'm actually deeply depressed right now, and just being willing to be like open, raw, and vulnerable with people was really like the gateway to where everything started changing for me. So yes, I was alone in like solitude of my feelings, right? Even though socially or like physically I wasn't alone. I come from a big family, right? I have 5 siblings. And my parents are still together. I could have reached out to any of those people. I could have reached out to like one of my youth pastors, could have reached out to one of the not youth pastors. I could have reached out to one of the other 1,000 people attending K2 on a weekly basis. And so like I said, like there was no shortage of that list. And it wasn't until I decided just to kind of take off that shroud and be vulnerable that anything started changing for me.
It makes sense because there's a difference. I mean, a real connection, I would think for it to be the most impactful, it's got to be real and authentic, or else it's not really a clean connect. Like, I think of it as like a lightning bolt. That is not a good analogy, but I think about like this pillar of light going between two people, but there's things blocking in the way. So it's like we're like kind of connecting, but something's not quite feeling natural here.
Yeah.
And I think when we put on those masks, which I think is totally natural to do, we have to be really self-reflective to figure that out. I'm sure right now, because I know I'm being recorded, I'm sure there's some adjustments in our conversation that would be different if I wasn't. I can't even say what it is right now, but most likely just as humans, but to really just be aware of, to allow for real human connections, I think is really healing.
Yeah, I mean, we all wear different levels of masks depending on the interaction that we're having, right? And I think the more masks you take off, the more genuine a connection becomes. So I think of my relationship with Brittany probably has the least total amount of masks in between us, but I'm sure there's still things like when I have a one-on-one conversation with Brittany, there's probably still parts of me that I'm filtering out, and I'm sure there's parts of her that she's filtering out to try to appease each other
Without even knowing, probably,
right?
Like,
Exactly. It's totally
yeah.
subconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think of my best friends, Tristan and Steven. There's definitely more masks in that relationship, and they're two of the closest people to me. And so,
Yeah.
I think it's about being willing just to take off one more mask.
I love that. So the podcast I See You comes from the phrase I see you that helped me a lot during a really difficult time in my life as a mantra. I was given a metal cuff that I now wear, and a lot of people wear that say I see you. That's something that has worked for me. Do you have a phrase or a mantra in your life that you say to yourself? Or I mean, you talked about the experience with your youth pastor, saying that terrible word that you said on my podcast.
The worst word.
In a church. We said it in a church,
Well,
which makes
okay,
it even better.
technically it was the Salt Lake Community College campus over by 15 and whatever south that is. So not really a church. It was just a building.
God couldn't be there. No, sorry.
Yeah, no way. Not allowed.
Not allowed.
Higher education.
He doesn't go to places like that.
Higher education? No way.
But what's like, do you have any other phrases or sayings that
Yeah,
have been really
so many.
kind of ground you?
One, I'm sure you're expecting me to say, because I've said it to you so many times already, but that's no pain is wasted or no grief is wasted. Um, it's an idea that the grief that you're given has purpose. Granted, a lot of time you have to like find out what that is. It's not just handed to you. Pain is pain until you like decide to do something with it. But no pain is wasted. You're not just experiencing it for no reason. It's not the universe or God or whatever you believe in torturing you just for funsies, but there actually is a meaning to it. And I was thinking about that on the way over. There's another one that I actually have tattooed on my side. That's a lyric from a good friend of mine and his band, Garrett Russell. And it's to truly live, you must begin anew. Trade your certainty for awe. And it's kind of like reapproach your life. Like if you're wanting to like start something new, reapproach your life as if you're brand new to the world. Trade all the certainty you have in how the world works and replace it with just the magnificence and appreciation of what life is.
Yep, that's it. Yep. It's a different way to say it, but it's so in congruence with other people I've talked to that have been through an unraveling of life and rebuilding and it's like getting rid of beliefs that they didn't even know they had and rewiring, getting down to the bare bones of just starting over of like, who am I? What do I like? What do I think about life? What do I think? What does my mom think? Not what does this person think, but what do I think? That's cool.
Yeah. And I was just talking with Brittany a couple days ago about one of the biggest desires I have for our daughter is that like she'll have autonomy in what she believes and what she thinks. And that like she doesn't think ice cream is good tasting because we've told her ice cream is good tasting. She gets to decide for herself, like, does ice cream actually taste good? And kind of to have this autonomy to like question everything and then choose what she believes in.
So me thinking about that from like a Christianity religious perspective and the gift of agency, why? Like of all the things you want for your daughter, why? Like, Can you speak a little more to that?
There's a really cool guy, I guess a pastor. His name is Cliff. I can never remember how to pronounce his last name. It's like Netchell or something like that. And he goes to different college campuses and he like lets college kids, ask him questions about Christianity or religion in general. And a big question he gets often is, why do we have free will? Or do we actually have free will? And his answer is kind of an analogy. And it's like, if you found out, Julie, that I was paying your husband $5,000 a month to love you and to be married to you, how would that make you feel about your marriage?
Like trash.
Right? Like it's worthless, right? Yeah. Like there's no truth to it, right? Even if then I was like, all right, I'm not doing it anymore, you wouldn't trust your husband anymore even though he says it, like you wouldn't trust him that he is loving you. And so this idea of the greatest demonstration of love is to step back and let somebody, make their own decisions rather than to force them into things. And it's because you can't force love to happen. And so my greatest gift to my daughter is for me to allow myself to step back and kind of like relinquish, quote unquote, the authority that I have on her to choose for her what she likes, doesn't like, what she is going to do, what she's not going to do, whatever. That's the greatest demonstration I can have for her, and to let her choose those things. And I'm also a huge believer in natural consequences. And like when you mess up and all of those consequences fall down on you, it's not likely you're going to do it again. I hope that answers it. I tried to shorten that answer, but there's a lot more to that.
It's okay. I'm just questioning my entire marriage now, and why he's just kidding.
No, I promise I'm not paying him. And if I did, it would have to be more than $5,000. I think we both know that.
Yeah. You're being married to someone that there are easier ways. No, thank you. That's actually that's really good. It's actually made me think a lot about how I parent my own children. I was like, it's true. I should probably maybe I could be a little less controlling, but it's okay.
Listen, I'm not making any kind of statements about people's parenting choices or
You're like, I'm about to have a baby and I know things, so let me tell you.
Yeah, listen, I've got a whole -3 weeks worth of parenting experience.
Killing it. So. No, but it's just a different perspective, and like I said, truth is truth, and I appreciate it. And thank you for being on the podcast today, for sharing your experience.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I will put in the show links where they can find more about you and your
TikTok,
website.
Instagram, Facebook, my website.
There's some
My website is just my first and last name.
You lucky.
My handle.
Mine has a dash.
I mean, it comes with, having a unique name, but my handle on all social media is Armless Bandit.
Armless Bandit. Yep. And he has some very entertaining, good videos on there.
Yeah,
You're like, how do you do that?
I try to be funny at least once.
You guys, thanks for being here on the ICU podcast, for joining us for this episode, and we will see you next time. Okay, let's be real. Sometimes what I think we need to restore our mental health more than anything else is just a break, which is why I think I need a vacation. And so do you. Join me and my special guest, Tony Overbay, on the first ICU Living Cruise, the mental health cruise of a lifetime. Check out and make sure you grab those early bird tickets at julie-dejesus.com/cruise. And guess what? You don't even need a babysitter. Kids set sail free. julie-dejesus.com/cruise. In our world today, do you ever feel like real, authentic human connection is becoming less of a certainty and more of an anomaly? Well, good news. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm Julie DeJesus. I'm a keynote speaker, an author, and a corporate trainer. I speak all over the country about how to utilize human connection to improve mental health, resilience, and even work performance. If you know a group looking for a speaker, you can contact me at julie-dejesus.com.